how do we both push ourselves and push our kids to strive for excellence or success that is often externally defined in a competitive world that often defines success for us and for them, and yet not have us and have them lose ourselves in the process, and actually somehow cultivate and develop the authentic, best selves of each individual person. And I would say that, to me, these are often in tension with each other. And I think many of us who want to focus lovingly on just my child's potential, many of us feel the pressure of educating kids in a very competitive world. If I actually take my eyes off the ball of the product for 1 second, even in the name of a sacred process, my kid might be at a disadvantage. And the flip side, I think, is that many of us who do try to push our kids or set them on paths, or ourselves find ourselves on very intense, competitive, product-oriented paths, sometimes look in that mirror and say, like, is this really me? And that is, hard. And I think it's probably obvious from this framing that I don't think the answer is yes, no, one or the other. It's we got to wrestle with this and figure this out. So let me say that schools in particular are really, hopefully, at best, wrestling with this right now, at worst, not wrestling with this right now, and simply, pushing kids through what, the movie Race to Nowhere calls a race to nowhere. I don't know if people are familiar with that, but there's been a lot written and a lot talked about, and I'm going to just share just a few titles of articles, because I think it just gives you a taste of what people are talking about. It's really calling on us to do a cheshbon hanefesh, a soul search, about our notions of what success even means today, and what that means for the way that we're educating our kids. So what does autonomy mean in schools? And you could think about the contrasts as well. Autonomy, interestingly, when I think about high school, for many people, autonomy starts literally with choosing where you're going to high school. Right? So again, so many of us, in a public school world, you're not making a choice. So there's not real autonomy there. You're going to where you've always known you would go, which, by the way, is totally fine. It's certainly what I did in 9th grade. But now, actually, that I'm living in an independent school world, I realize that one of the most powerful things about independent school is choice. So many people walk through GAN and say, my God, your kids are like so engaged. Your kids are they seem like they really want to be learning. And I say to them, yeah, they chose to be. That's a pretty good start. They actually made an active choice. And most people don't end up at GAN by default. Most don't. It's a significant commitment to spend 4 years in a Jewish high school, and it's not the default choice for most people, which has its pluses and its minuses, you can imagine, when you're running a school. I think, on the whole, it's a wonderful thing, because people have to make an intentional choice to be there, and that means that they get up in the morning and they feel a sense of ownership over where they're going to school every day. That is a huge step in the direction toward autonomy when it comes to high school. And we forget that most kids in this country are actually, now I'm going to say something a little bit provocative, but it is true if you kind of know the history of American education, are basically being moved through the kind of industrial model of education. Literally moved through the 12 years of education, and actually in the school experience, if you just look at the way schools are set up, moved through the actual education experience. Class to class, assignment to assignment, do what I'm told next, and then hopefully do it well, and then move on to my next experience. So mastery, increasingly, people are talking about mastery not as the quantity of information you know. Right? I can get more information from my phone very quickly, as can my students, than a teacher can get out of their mouths, right? I mean, what does it mean to master something? It used to be mastery was read those chapters, memorize those facts. The fact is, we just have unprecedented access to information. Mastery now is about what you do with the information that you have access to. By the way, I'm not saying there's no value in memorization, and I'm not saying there's no value in actually knowing anything. But mastery increasingly is more about what are you going to do with the information you have at hand. Can you think critically about it? Can you analyze it? Can you synthesize it? Can you apply it in a new context? It's about depth as much as it is about breadth, right? Because ultimately, can you ask new questions? Right? Can you uncover the kinds of questions that you then are going to go on and find creative answers to? And one of the things I hear our students say all the time, which I love, is like, wow, our teachers really want us to challenge it. They seem to like it when we ask questions they don't have answers to. And that's what you want in an educator. You do not want an educator who feels threatened by being asked a question that he or she doesn't have an answer to, because I promise you there's at least 5 people out there, and there's an entire internet that has more answers than that teacher could possibly have. Right? So you want a teacher who just thrives on their kids finding questions that are new things and opening up possibilities for new explorations of applying knowledge that everyone has access to. This is actually, mastery is more about process than product. And that actually the way you cultivate a drive and motivation toward mastery and excellence is focusing intensely more on the process than the product. This speaks to those 2 Jewish texts that we talked about at the beginning. If you're constantly focused on product and you're constantly praising product, you cultivate an extraordinary fear of failure. One of my alumni actually coincidentally just sent me an article today that said, Rabbi Baker, I think you'd like this article based on some of the character development work that you're doing at GAN. And he pointed me to another New York Times article, Why Failure is the Key to Success. I'm sure many of us have seen that stuff. A little bit counterintuitive, especially for those of us that are used to being successful in everything we do. But actually, you cannot grow and learn or really reach high levels of success without failing. And it is scary as heck to fail in school because the stakes feel so high. How do we possibly cultivate in our kids the deep notion that actually you need to fail in order to grow and to achieve what you want to achieve? We have to figure that out. It's essential. What drives teacher satisfaction in the workplace? I think most of us would think the number one thing is, anyone? Money. I think a lot of people assume that the problem with the teaching profession is that great people won't teach because it's just not valued by society. Teachers aren't paid as much as they can if you just give them a little bit more money. No, that's valuable. We should express our value of teachers by paying them as much as we possibly can pay them, because that's how our society expresses value, don't get me wrong. But that's a carrot. The studies of teacher motivation show the number one thing that teachers want. Two things. One is to feel like they can be successful and competent in their work. That goes back to mastery. To feel like the system isn't fighting against them. To feel like they can do their jobs and do it well. That means they need to be set up for success. They need professional development. They need class sizes that they can manage. They need a school system and leaders and parents and others who they feel like are in this with them and not fighting against them. The other thing is teachers feeling like they're part of a professional community, because community creates meaning. Feeling like I'm not in an isolated profession, closed in my door, doing what I do day in and day out with my kids, left to generate as much meaning as I can on my own, but not part of a community of meaning. Teachers who are part of communities that are working together to grow their craft and that are investing in kids as more than just math students or science students or English students, as actually full human beings, are the most satisfied in their work. Teachers who are working in schools that have a clear mission and vision and purpose are the most satisfied there. And by the way, interestingly, a little tidbit, independent schools, private schools, pay teachers typically less than public schools, largely because teachers want to be there. That's the other amazing thing about walking into a classroom at GAN or in other independent schools. What you often see is teachers and students who want to be there and who are engaged in the beautiful, passionate art of learning. And schools can often feel so isolating, not only for teachers, but for students, when you walk into a school and feel like, I am part of something. There is something going on here. There is an energy, there is a buzz, there's a life, there's a soul to this place. It's because there is, because people are feeling connected to each other and feeling part of something larger than themselves. That's the beauty of community. My students make fun of me for saying community all the time, which means they get it. It's like the word I get parodied for more than anything else, because it comes out of my mouth probably more than any other word, is community. Because in my view, community and relationships, and here I mean relationships with teachers, huge. Teachers whose kids feel like care about them, not just as students, but as people. Our students say all the time, I go to my teacher for anything. Yes, my teacher spends tons of time with me outside of class on my math homework, but what's better than that is I can ask them any question, I can talk to them about life, and they care. And relationships with peers. And by the way, of course, parents and adults and friends' parents. But peers who are also part of something larger than themselves and who are also on a journey to somewhere and not just a race to nowhere. And to me, community and relationships and purpose and meaning are not a nice to have. They're not like the fluff that accompanies the rigor of education. They are the foundation upon which rigor happens. They are the framework within which kids can strive and take risks and fail and get back up again and pursue excellence and try out different things and explore and discover who they are and who they're not. It is in a context and a framework of meaning and purpose and community and relationships and nurture that actually the greatest striving for excellence, I think, can happen.